Dear Ben Whishaw. So Ben, similarly, you had you're playing a character now grown up, but sort of so iconic as a little boy with those big eyes and had such an impact on so many. Did the original film have an impact on you? And then how did you go about creating such a honest, indelible, moving portrayal of this man, single man trying to hold on to his family and his home and ultimately his childhood?
I was obsessed with the film when I was a child. It was the first film I ever saw, and my dad taped it off the telly on a VHS tape, and I watched it obsessively for my whole childhood. And I used to dress up as Mary Poppins and parade up and down the street in our village. And so it has a huge mythic part of my childhood. So I was sort of moved every day because, of course, it's moving to, and you don't expect as an adult to sort of be revisiting something that's such a part of your childhood. I was so moved every day to be involved in that world again, that I still recall so well. And I mean, I can't watch the first film without crying. And how did I play the character? I mean, it was brilliantly written. That was the thing. I mean, it was all there, and that's what I think people never say. Is like, you just have to do it. David wrote this beautiful role, so delicate and so perceptive, and so clever to get that in there, whilst also making it the whole thing fantastical and magical and thrilling. Then you have a great song or two. That helps. It was very instinctive. I don't know. I didn't have to think too much about it.
Well, it is so honest and true. And just indulge me 1 second. We've only been screening the film for about 4 weeks. But I have gotten so many unsolicited emails and phone calls from fathers and grandfathers who are so moved at the portrayal of that character, of how that character is written and how you've directed it, in his ability to be honest with his children about what he can and can't do, his emotional reality in front of his children. And it has spoken to dads in a way that I never saw it coming. And I sort of wanted to point that out and share that with you, because it's having such it speaks so much to today, what dads try and hopefully hold on to for their families.
It's not even being a father that's a huge part of it, but it's also just Michael's dilemma. Because I've had many people come up to me as well, Mark, and they've said to me, "I am Michael. You don't realize." And I'm like, okay, I get it. It hits the core of a lot of people.
John DeLuca, let me ask you a question, because you do so much in so many ways, from choreography to producing, so much of your contribution, and so much obviously Rob in the center, and just any observations on this particular film, knowing it's his most personal film.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people have touched upon it. It really is, he does have this, he's the greatest parent I've ever seen. He's so unselfish in his care of people and the art of making movies, that no matter how huge the pressures are, we walk onto the set, or we walk into any area where the actors or the crew or any people working for him are, and he just has this way of turning on this positive energy that's all about them, and it's all about you. It's all about taking care and nurturing. And so Mary Poppins, I feel that this was not only the right time, but it's the right time because the right man was here to share his vision with the world. I think it's the perfect time because Rob was here to make it.
Thank you, John. That was lovely. Thank you. Mark Shaman, so composer extraordinaire, and some shoes to fill. Just why this movie for you came and how you accomplished it so beautifully.
Like everyone else, it was an extremely large part of my childhood. I think it was the complete My entire childhood was Mary Poppins. I really have no other memory of my childhood except listening to that record and reading the synopsis of the story and the fact that I would grow up and even as a child had the ability to write music and lyrics and was even fascinated by the orchestrations on it. And I learned everything I could from that album. So then I grew up and this dream came true where I got to incorporate every single thing that I ever learned from that album into real life and got to write songs with Scott and then got to score the movie, which is a whole other thing outside of songwriting. And it's so nice to see everyone, because it's an odd thing about scoring a movie, and I'm sure for the editor as well, and Lord knows Rob and John, but we live with your images, every frame of them. You know, 30 frames a second. I know you also intimately. And you have to work in concert with you. And so I feel like I've sometimes gone up to stars of movies I've scored, and they're like, "Get away from me! Who are you?" I'm like, "But I know you so well, Jack Nicholson." But to get the chance to spend the months and the year of scoring this movie and getting to work with these people and these faces and these eyes and the body language, it was just a fantasy.
Scott, you wrote the lyrics with Mark, and the range of the wordplay and the lyrics, from the witty rap that you said in music hall for Lin to the profundity of Nothing's Gone Forever, is just such an extraordinary range. Just the challenge of accomplishing all that.
My favorite part of the whole experience was the months that Rob, John, David, Mark, and I spent together in the books and carving out what the musical numbers were going to be. And I think that's probably one of the most creative times I've had in my very long time in show business.
Fantastic. And lastly, but certainly with the highest regard, David, because your screenplay is so technically proficient and so complicated, but so simple in its complications, and if that makes sense. And also the voices of those characters being so true. I mean, the words for those are just really extraordinary. Just that experience, if you could.
Thank you. Yeah, when we were coming up with our story, when we were building it together, first it was with Rob and John and trying to find how we were going to frame the story, and then Mark and Scott joining us, from the five of us sitting in a room together a couple of times a week and talking through where we wanted this journey to take us and how we could get to a story that would echo in some way our feeling for that original film. That was the most magical kind of collaboration time I've ever had. And it would be very easy to enter into a project like this feeling like you were walking on sacred ground, or you could fall at any moment. And the fact that Rob was doing it was the primary reason I was willing even to talk about doing it, because he's a master at musicals. And from the first day we started collaborating together, I felt like we all had each other's back, we all were protecting each other's work, and we were all telling the same story. So that's really where this all began for me. And just listening to everyone talk has been kind of moving for me, to hear the passion that everyone has for this project. I think that's what made this turn into the film that it was. I think we all understood what we wanted to create, and it's really magical to hear that passion in everyone down the line, because that's what I felt the whole time I was working on it. I really
No, that's
feel
well said. I think all of us felt that in the whole journey. So thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to now some questions and do the best I can to see. And yes, please.
My question is going to go out to Rob, to Mark, to our composers, our writer, producers. So I'm curious how you all determine the balance between the nods to the past while taking us forward into the future.